Right, so what we'll do is that on this tutorial, we'll just cover the last few tasks you've got left outstanding on Unit 1. We fully covered both Units 2 and 3 last week, so you've a good idea of what you need to do to fulfil the requirements of those, which are much more practical units. It'll be documents as much as anything with a little bit of link wordage, that's all really, to say what they are and how they're used, that's all. So, yeah, on this one, it's looking at much of the things that you looked at in one of the units on your DET.
Yes.
It's looking for your SWOT analysis on assessment, but also feedback from learners in college and IQA's feedback. Now, IQA's feedback, that's it. It can come back in a number of ways.
Okay.
As we've said before, there are standardisation meetings where you can look at other assessors' work and do peer assessment on that as well. But also your own SWOT analysis on how you approach the assessment process and any appraisals that you've got for that. But one of the appraisals it is a formal appraisal. Periodically, the IQA is supposed to watch you do an assessment.
Okay.
And there are some criteria to achieve on there, and usually the IQA will go through that with you beforehand, and then they should be explained to the learner that I'm not there to watch the learner, I'm there to watch you. So it takes a bit of pressure off the learner if there's a host of people knocking around. So yeah, and then after the assessment's complete, I will then usually interview the learner to ask them how it was for them. How did they feel?
How they felt.
And take some notes off there, and then I'm able to give feedback to the assessor.
Right.
So that's another way of actually delivering that, rather than just a formal appraisal which goes through a whole range of things. It just covers the actual assessment process that you've just gone through with a learner. So yeah. What it also does in that process with the IQA, it's also supposed to have a schedule for doing that process, and the schedule will depend on the assessor. If it's quite a lengthy qualified assessor that's been doing the role for quite some time, perhaps just once a year.
Right.
If it's a new assessor, probably 3 times in a year. Yeah, and then the second year probably twice, and then the third year perhaps down to 1 again.
Right,
so,
okay.
One thing that the IQ has to do when he's working within an organisation is to have a strategy, and that's part of the strategy, is how that will take place. Okay. Also, we've got to make sure from the management point of view that assessors are not overloaded and given too much to do. It's his say. He can walk into management and say, look, that is too many. You need to get sorted out. You either need some more assessors, or you need to do something about the way it's being assessed. Yeah? Because
assessors are normally tutors as well, aren't they? So they have that teaching responsibility as well. Yeah.
Yeah, but that applies in your case. And most academic work, which is, as we said, is Unit 3, but in Unit 2, it can quite often be that the assessor is totally separate from the tutorage.
Right.
For instance, I worked in a college or a training provider, and I was out actually assessing in the workplace most of the week.
Right.
I'd have appointments made, I would go out to visit the appointments and then do all my paperwork on a Friday and hand it in and make my appointments for the following week on Monday morning. And I would meet the tutors occasionally if there were some issues that needed to be tidied up with specific, with specific learners. And, we'd work together, but separately.
Right. So you're in coordination with each other and you're supporting each other, but you're in separate areas, right?
Yeah. Much of the practical work is assessed up to level 2, and it can be assessed in the college workshop up to level 2. But usually at level 3, there is no simulation allowed, there is no evidence from college, apart from the academic work that they've got to do at college, that can be included in the level 3. The level 3 has got to be all from work. So when they start a level 3, to give you some idea, there are usually about 8 units at level 3, and they will do probably 3, sometimes 4 will be mandatory. After that, you've got a choice, in mechanical certainly, of over 450 units.
Yes.
So we can tailor the level 3 to meet what the young person's doing. We go around and we go through the units before they actually register at level 3. I have a chat with the supervisor or the foreman or the bloke that owns the business, and we look at the units, and the boss will usually say, oh yeah, we can cover that, we can cover that, we can cover that, we can cover that. And we put together, I make him look at a lot more than he probably wants to, but he will sometimes just say, oh yeah, forget that one, we can do that one better. Until we've selected a group of units that meet the requirements of the awarding body, and also cover exactly what the young person is going to be doing.
The requirements for it,
and that way it makes the assessment actual, because it's going to meet the needs of the employer and the apprentice, and it's going to meet the awarding body's requirements and standards. And again, that is another responsibility of the assessor to make sure that the registration of units is correct, and it will meet the requirements of all involved.
Okay.
So, as I said, it is slightly, to be honest, there is a difference between the two. With academic work, there is a certain amount of subjectivity.
Yes.
In practical work, there is none. It's either achieved or it's not.
Done or not, yes.
Very black and white. It has to be for the way it works, but that is the only difference, really. The process that you will go through is exactly the same. Sitting down with the learner, finding out what they need to do, looking at the criteria and making sure they know exactly what they have to do.
Exactly.
And then going through the assessment process when they're ready. I mean, what I would do, I would get a phone call from the learner, certainly on his level 3, and say, I'm going to be doing such and such a job on Wednesday, and there's about 3 or 4 units are going to come out of that job. Will you come and watch? And we go down, make the paint truck go down. And that's the way we work through the qualification. The other stipulation that certain units have is that they must be assessed as competent 3 times. Not just once. It's got to happen 3 times, so that they've proved competence in that particular area. Yeah.
So they're meeting the standards throughout the whole. Yes.
Yeah, and it's making sure that they've got a good knowledge of that, and quite often it's for health and safety reasons as much as anything else. Exactly. Yeah, to make sure that they've got a good grounding on what they've got to do and the method they've got to use to do it. Sometimes you can cut corners. But a lot of the time you've got to stick to the way it's set up to be done. But really, as IQA, you've got to be also there to support the assessors, because obviously they may come to, certainly new ones or ones that's not been doing the job very long, will obviously have questions. What do I do now? I'm in this position, how do I do this or how do I do that?
Am I making the right decision or not?
Yeah. And have a look at those, and then it may be sometimes that the IQA will get a question and say, well, I'm not sure myself on that. I'll go back to the awarding body and contact the EQA and say, look, we've got a problem here. What about such and such a thing? And 9 times out of 10, they'll say, oh, yeah, you just do this or you just do that. Ah, right, okay. But it's got to come from them because they're the awarding body. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So occasionally, the EQA come back and go, oh, we hadn't noticed that. Right. Well, we'll have to have a look at this and come back to you.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen very often, but it does happen from time to time.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll see in academic work, you'll see an assignment written, and there are mistakes in the way the assignment's written that are confusing.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll need clarification, before.
Because I found out when I was doing the marking assessments that they were just the odd word would be either they'd add an S on or would misspell, and it just completely changes the whole setting
Sometimes, if it's at the end of a qualification, there's one or two little ones. I've actually put those right myself because again, I know the learner, I know what they're doing, and quite often it's because they're rushing. They're getting to the end of the program and they go, all right, I need to get all this finished now, and they just rush things and make little mistakes.
So if you see consistent spelling mistakes or grammatical mistakes, would you just put in the feedback and say, just pay a little bit more attention on your spelling and grammar?
What I tend to do, usually if you've got, can you see that I've got on screen now?
Yes.
Can you see myself is underlined in green? Yes. Mm-hmm. There's a reason for that.
Because it's not the right grammatic.
It also suggests areas that I could work on. For example, working on taking steps if I have not met the standards, such as additional training and making myself much more familiar.
Yes. And ensuring, I could have done an ensuring I am familiar with the standards instead.
I'm not, it's not actually grammatically wrong, that. I'm just trying to think why it's put there.
Yeah, because I looked at it quite a lot, but I couldn't see what I could change it to unless I changed the whole sentence. So.
Actually, no, you can't. How would this look?
Oh yes, becoming.
Yeah.
That's much better, yes.
Yeah. There is a difference, and as the higher you go up in qualifications, the more you'll notice it, that there is a difference between the normal English that you would use to write something and actually technical English for a qualification. Yeah.
True.
You use the language differently. You would use things like that would change. Yeah, there was nothing actually wrong with what you'd written. I mean, it was well understandable. I know what you meant, but certainly in academic English, you're expected to use a different sort of language.
Yes, it's like when we talk verbally, we'll use shortened language easier, but when we're actually say emailing each other, it's a different type of setting, isn't it? Yeah.
What I tend to do is when I've written something, I'll look at it and probably go and I'll change it.
Yes.
Once I've written it once, I'll look and think, that's not really brilliant. I'll change that a bit. That sounds better now. Because
I used to send a text message to a work colleague, and my sister-in-law was saying, why are you taking, how long is that message? I'm like, it's not long. It's only a few sentences long. But it's just, I've got to make sure that I'm sending the correct wording.
You're not writing it in text speak.
Yeah.
Well, it's a habit that you get into. I even when I'm sending text, I put question marks on the end and things like that. I'll put something in brackets. Yeah. It's just habit, the way you actually do that. If you as an engineer, I had to write formal reports, and the formal report had to be in correct English so that there could be no equivocation whatsoever. It meant exactly what I'd said. I mean, English is as you well know, there are probably 4 or 5 words in a lot of instances that could be used.
In different meanings.
The meaning, however, is slightly different. Most people, the vast majority of the public wouldn't even notice, but an academic would, because it's the nuance that you put on it with using that different word.
Even such an example is when you're using dare, you could do THEYRE or THEIR or THEIR.
Again, that's just spelling, getting yeah. But no, words like something, I'm trying to think of one there that'll work. You would use something that was useful and you would say it was conducive or something of that nature. It's the same but slightly different because it means it works better.
Right.
Yeah? The value of following with assessment process and earlier linked together. Reflective practice, continuing lesson learning. Yeah, that's your CPD and your reflective practice, which we've covered on, I think it was Units 1 and 2 and I can't remember which others. On 3.
Yes.
In fact, 3 was probably the best example. Yeah. And again, it's for most teachers, it's an automatic process. Probably a lot of it goes on in your head. What we try and do today, I mean, this was in the past. You did things like this automatically, but it was never never an issue. You always reflected on what you'd done and whether you could have done it better or changed something or whatever, but you didn't record it.
No.
It was a sort of. I must remember that in future. Whereas today, reflection is a lot more. Well, its importance has been recognised really, and again, as I said, every teacher did it, but nobody actually recorded anything down. Yeah. It is actually formalising it and making sure that what you have thought about, you've made a note of, yeah, so that it won't get missed, yeah. CPD was also.
Also, yes. I noticed that straight away. I did spell check this and go over it, but...
Oh, God, you did it twice.
It was very crucial to point that out. Make sure it's also.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I could have done this a bit more compacted, but it just felt like it at that time. Now I can see things that I could have pushed in a bit.
Never excuse writing reams and reams and reams. Sometimes it can be useful, as you know. If you're cross-referencing and you haven't added something that you were going to add, then you've got to rewrite it again later on where you could have actually cross-referenced it straight across. I think we can do without that one. Oh, wrong way around. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
That's those two covered. I'm not actually going to go through the others at this point. Yeah. Obviously, there were no issues here that I've picked up, so it's more than likely the others will be the same. What I'll do is, now I've got them, I'll finish these off for you over the next couple of days.
Okay, thank you.
And then I'll let you have those back.
Fantastic.
Just let me. So what we'll do is we'll finish that for tonight, and then Of course, if you've got you need any more information in between, you know where to get hold of me.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I'll actually close the meeting from now.